Hello, very dedicated, never morphed listener. I'm saying that because this little intro is only gonna exist for 2 weeks. And then I'm backdating this episode so it looks like it lives in its normal spot where it's supposed to be. So you're listening to this within the first 2 weeks of me putting it up. And that means that you are listening to it in the first 2 weeks that I put it up. Yes, this episode was fully edited and ready to go. Did it go up? No, it did not. Shout out to the person who pointed this out in a Discord server that Cat Blackguard happened to be in, and then Cat Blackguard sent that to me and said, Hey. And I said, oh. So shout out to that person. It was a mistake. You were right. It was super a mistake. And because you're here, dedicated listener, maybe you even have alerts on like a real special little guy. Because you're here, you get a prophecy. You get a prophecy. Here's your prophecy. I have to summon the spirits. Hold on. Only you can save the Blockbuster video from extinction. Oh, you thought they were extinct? They're not. They're endangered. It must be you to bring back the Blockbuster video. How do you do so? Oh, you shall know. When you bite the fruit of knowledge, it will be delicious, and it will tell you true. But I will give you a hint. I will give you a hint. I'm not supposed to. I'm not supposed to give you hints, chosen one. But you are so dedicated. This is your gift. You must watch every episode of the Animorphs TV show. I believe it is up on in full on YouTube. And only then will you learn the secrets of saving the Blockbuster video. Be safe, chosen one. I love you. So that's your prophecy. I hope that you like it. And I hope that your travels and your quest and your journey are safe. Why did I record this? Yeah, I guess that you know why if you're listening to it. Now, this is 4 minutes. What the fuck is wrong with me? This is 4 minutes long. This is for why this is how this, so that you know that when the episode is no longer after the start of book fucking 15, because I'm gonna backdate it in 2 weeks. This is why. This is how you know. This is the explanation. This is the explanation. That's all it was. That's all it needed to do. Was to thank you for your dedication and explain why in 2 weeks this this episode will be backdated so that it shows up in the right place. I'm sick again. Okay, love you, bye.
Brought to you by Hug House Productions.
Okay, folks, we are back in it again. We are finishing up book 13. Can you believe it? Finishing it up. It's been such a wild ride. I can't believe the book ends like that. I to this day am thinking about the ramifications. And if you've read ahead, you might know that I'm not going to get a lot of closure about the ramifications anytime soon. But it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. Next week we start on book 14, which, let me tell you, is really different. It's really different. So, buckle in. I'll see you on the other side of the racetrack or the Area 51 next episode. Read the book. What was the last time you read not episode 14, book 14? When was the last time you read book 14? Right after you listen to this episode, I would love for you to go read book 14 and imagine my state of mind. Imagine my state of mind. Thank you. Enjoy. Bye-bye. So, chapter 22, he tells the others his plan off page, and they are starting to basically get information. Cassie is going to stay in Wolf Morph. Axe is going to stay Andalite and stay out of view and watch Cassie. Marco is in Gorilla Morph. And Jake is doing what Tobias calls his old job, keeping watch up in the air. Jake is a little worried that he's not going to be as good at it as Tobias was, which I think is very sweet.
And it's also kind of this interesting relationship between, like, Tobias and Jake, and it's like all this time Tobias is worrying that, like, he's not as useful to the team because he can't be, like, on the ground in the missions alongside with them, but at the same time, like, Jake is always, like, so eager to be, like, the one who puts himself on the line for his friends. Like, even just in the last chapter, he was, like, the first person to jump at the thought of, like, morphing into Ket because, you know, he's Mr. Self-Sacrifice. He has to put himself between the danger and his friends, but it's like Tobias has a lot of those feelings too. So it's just like, it's like that one comic of, like, the people who keep throwing themselves and contorting their bodies around each other so they can be the one to take the bullet for their friend.
Yeah, exactly. Throw Cassie in the mix too. Rachel, meanwhile, is like, "Nuh-uh, I'm out of here. I could punch the bullet if you want me to."
Instead of "I'll die for you," Rachel is "I'll kill for you."
Correct. So then Tobias gets the DNA, and he starts morphing. Rachel is still pissed because she still thinks that this is a cop-out from the Elemist. But everybody else is pretty impressed. He is, we get like a typical morphing sequence from him. He says, "My insides were reorganized totally." Gross. Hork-Bajir have at least 2 hearts. So he has new hearts forming inside of him, which is so gross. And then he feels the wrist blades, the blades at the elbow, the horns, the snake head, everything. He still has bird-like feet, which they all find kind of funny, because basically his talons just get, like, bigger. He's getting them all ready, and then the end of chapter is Rachel checking in with Tobias, asking if he's okay. She says, "You haven't exactly had a great day." And the chapter ends, "I laughed grimly. I'm a freak of nature, Rachel. Any day I stay alive is a good day for me."
Mood. This book rules. I think that by this point in this book, it has become like one of my favorites I've read recently.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably actually not despite it giving me this conflict with the Elemist, but because it gives me this conflict with the Elemist. Like, I think this is the first book that has sort of challenged me narratively, like ethically speaking, in a way that I really wasn't prepared for. Because I am balancing these two, like, one, he has so much power, he has all of the power in the universe, and he just won't do it because he's not supposed to, and I think that that's horseshit. But also, yeah, he didn't agree to any of this, and he's giving you a lot despite that. Despite not having made promises, he is still coming through for you. Yeah, this one really put me into a little bit of a philosophical tailspin, and I appreciate that very deeply. Did you find yourself feeling any conflict here about, like, what the Elemist is throwing at them and what he's giving them and what have you?
I think it probably struck me a little less than it did you, because I didn't feel quite so badly about the Elemist growing up, but at the same
Fair.
time, I was probably feeling like a little worse about him after this, because I generally had like my general recollection of the Elemist was like he was this like generally benevolent higher power who sometimes like hopped into their adventures. I didn't have like recollections of like a lot of specific things he had done, or even if there were things he could do. And I think I also like definitely never read like, I believe there's like a specific Elemist Chronicles book somewhere
There is,
in the
yeah.
Animorphs chronology. I definitely never read that. Like, so I was like, you're being kind of like a bit of a dick to these like 13-year-olds who are just like trying to figure out their lives. You don't have to be like playing these mind games with them, you know?
Yeah, straight up. That part I do find pretty irredeemable. I do think it is especially fucked for him to say, "You don't look like a human to me." Elamist, you can't say that. You can't say that. He's fragile.
Yeah, instead of like asking Tobias repeatedly, okay, but do you know what you want? And then just like leaving the point hanging, you could have been like, hey, I want you to tell me what it is you want so that I can do it for you, so that at least Tobias would have had some resolution in that sense. I'm not saying he would have been like happier if he had like forced himself to say, I want to be human again, but
Mm-hmm.
it would have like helped him have some sense of autonomy in the situation.
Yeah, yeah. I think he also probably would have been just as mad if he had to make the decision. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I that would also be very interesting if basically he had been forced to suss it out for himself. Um yeah, the Elemist, well, politically and philosophically, I'm very conflicted on the Elemist here. I'm not conflicted about saying, yeah, he's absolutely being a dick to these children. So, chapter 23, Jake is flying cover and giving directions, and he is not doing very good, but Tobias is helping him out. I found this very cute. Again, must be like a good boost of confidence for Tobias that Jake, who is their leader, is doing a bad job at Tobias's old job.
Yeah, it's not just that Tobias is good at this because he's the only one who does it. It's good at this because he's good at this because he has practiced and like worked out a
Mhm.
good situation for doing it. It's like he has a skill for this now, and it's not just something you get good at by being a bird.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's practiced. He's gotten very, very adept at knowing what to look out for and how. Which yeah, that's a whole skill set, my man. Like that is not just yeah, it's not just a morphing thing. It's something that you're very good at that nobody else has had the time, ability, or practice to get good at. I thought that was very lovely.
Yeah, like we go back to those like scenes in the first chapter where he is like directing the Hork-Bajir through the forest and like very expertly giving this advice on like how to move and how to alert him to their movements and all that. And it's like you put any of the Animorphs, any of the other Animorphs in that situation, they probably couldn't have done that half as well as he did.
Totally. Tobias, meanwhile, is in this Hork-Bajir body, and he is like, I want to fight. I want violence. And they're heading towards a big pile of rocks towards the ravine, and they see the two taxons, and this is where Tobias is like, ooh, I want to fight him. And Rachel is like, no, I am telling you no. This is not the time for violence. Me, Rachel, the war crimes one, I'm telling you that this is not the time. And she says, the person you're mad at is beyond your reach. You can't get back at the Ellimist for betraying you. And then Tobias's narration says, somehow her words penetrated the black rage that had swallowed me up. No, I couldn't get back at the Ellimist. And it was him I was furious with. Wasn't it? Rachel was right. She had to be. Oh, Tobias, honey, you are now reckoning with your internal conflict. Finally, I do not think that you are mad at the Ellimist. I think you are mad at yourself. Now, Rachel, I think, has every right to be mad here because she does believe that this is what the Ellimist promised her. But Tobias is straight up like projecting here. He is not mad at the Ellimist necessarily. He is mad at himself because he understands that the Ellimist hasn't betrayed him. He has betrayed his own desires, like in the different betray way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has, it's a little ambiguous about whether he purposefully trapped himself as a Nothlit in the first place. He probably wouldn't ever want to acknowledge that if it was the truth. And now he is like faced with being primarily in this hawk body that he chose for himself and still being mad about it. And like just playing this bad game of telephone of like telling Rachel the wrong information so she affirms back to him the wrong information that he like validates himself to be angry about because, well, Rachel said it, so it must be true.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Luckily he doesn't have much time to think about that because the ravine is being cut off by fire and more Hork-Bajir. If they're going to get to this ravine, they know they're going to have to fight through the Hork-Bajir, which really does take on a different tone now that we've gotten Jara and Ket. So, chapter 24, Tobias and Rachel have to fight through the other Hork-Bajir, but they're super outnumbered. Luckily, Jake pulls a classic Tobias here and comes in as reinforcement. And as a peregrine falcon and starts, cawing and clawing at some of these Hork-Bajir. So they just keep barreling towards the ravine. Visser 3 shows up. It's a whole mess. And I say, in my notes, Tobias initially freaked out, but instead whips out his improv skills and starts yelling, Ket Hallpack free, which is genius. As Visser 3 realizes that if he fights back, he is going to be pushed into the ravine too, or he can just let a suicide happen, and that's much easier for him. So, in fact, Tobias as Ket Hallpack yells again, jumps into the ravine to make it look like he's doing a good ol', not Bonnie and Clyde, the two women version of Bonnie
Thelma
and Clyde.
And Louise.
Thank you, Thelma and Louise. Yeah, Thelma and Louise, is it? And this is why we needed Gorilla Marco. Just under the lip of the ravine, there's a cave. And Gorilla Marco grabs Tobias from the jump in the air And then down at the bottom of the ravine, they have Cassie and Jake, I think, as wolves, quote unquote, eating the actual Hork-Bajir, who. Now, this is crazy.
Yeah, there was something so Looney Tunes about this. It's like Rachel and Tobias, as Jera and Ket, pretend to jump off the cliff. Marco catches them. When like Visser 3 and whoever look over the cliff to see their bodies, they see the actual Ket and Jara lying at the bottom, being fake torn apart by wolves as the other Animorphs. And there's just like, there's something very Gravity Falls about the imagery of this, like the aliens pretending to be torn apart by wolves because they can slice their own head open and deal with it. And it's...
Oh yeah, I think it's important to specify the pretend is pretending that it's lethal or fatal. They are in fact being ripped apart. Like it's so
but they're
gruesome.
And they're just cool with it. And
they're just like, it's fine, we'll get better.
And then we get this beautiful moment of Visser 3 with the classic fools as he sees these dead Hork-Bajir at the bottom and apparently not bothering to clean up because he just assumes the wolves will eat them whole and no one else will ever find the corpses.
Yep.
Once again,
classic Visser 3 shit.
The day is saved thanks to his complete and utter ego and incompetence.
I love him so much.
He laughed
so
with
ridiculous.
a terrible laugh. The wolves will give them both the burial they deserve.
You dramatic bitch. I love him. Visser 3 would have loved Drag Race. He's like, the humans can morph? What? So, chapter 25, they did it. They get them to the meadow. They keep calling it Eden. They have this like Adam and Eve sort of thing going on with these two Hork-Bajir. I say we're really mixing so many illusions in this book between the Eden and the Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, again, like, you know, the also pretending to commit suicide in the previous chapter. Also slightly Romeo and Juliet, and now we're on to Adam and Eve. And it's just like, yeah, this is definitely the way that like middle schoolers who haven't had like a real English lit class would like try to phrase this stuff.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Jake points out that this meta was probably created by the Elemist. Tobias keeps saying that the Elemist lied to him, and in my notes I say that's literally not what happened. I feel like this book is gaslighting me at this point. And like I knew that it wasn't, and I knew that it was just Tobias like convincing himself, but I was still like, my God, book, you're killing me. And then the Hork-Bajir say that they are going to have a kahatnaj, a baby. They're gonna be a parents, which is very sweet.
They're gonna have lots of little Hork-Bajirlings.
Yeah, and they're all gonna be free. And they finally ask them, like, hey, what's the sexual dimorphism like in your species? Like, what? How can you tell who's male and female? They look almost exactly the same, except the males have one additional horn, and also they seem to suggest that they have different reproductive organs, which they will not be telling these children about.
This whole chapter was kind of great because it's like after literally one of the most harrowing situations the Animorphs have been in, it's just like, yeah, we got you home. You're going to have lots of babies. And it's like this whole everyone laughs kind of ending as the Hork-Bajir are playing coy about their sexual organs. And it's just like, yep, gotta wrap it up, kids. No time to think about this and process it.
Yeah, they sure are gonna be parents. This is such a mom and dad move. So, chapter 26, it's Sunday. Tobias is moping. He is back in his meadow and back in his territory. And Rachel has come to talk to him, and he is fully avoiding her. He does not want to talk to her. He says, I didn't want pity, not even Rachel's pity. I was dealing with things, but I was barely dealing. And it felt like if someone was nice to me, I'd totally fall apart. Again, mood. So he is doing his usual hawk routines. He's trying to find the entrances to the Yerk pool. He's watching controllers come and go. And then Axe comes looking for him. He doesn't want to talk to Axe either. Axe tries talking, and Tobias is just like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. And Axe just winds up leaving. So Tobias is remembering his human life as best as he can. He is thinking about watching TV and sitting on a couch and sleeping in a bed and having food readily available in a kitchen. He is seeing his parents, but he is just remembering them from photographs because he doesn't have any actual memories of them at this point. But he's got pictures of them. Another memory is occurring to him spontaneously. He is seeing himself the way that he appeared when the Ellimist was putting him in the weird liminal space. He sees himself as half human, half bird, and he's not liking that. So he decides to go to bed. He's like, I just need to sleep because this shit is fucked and I'm sick of thinking thoughts. So he falls asleep, and in a dream, he is in a room in a house. And he sees in the room in the house himself laying in bed. And the self in him in bed wakes up, sees Hawk Tobias, and says, a bird? So Tobias is telling human Tobias that this is a dream, but we can pretty clearly tell that this is some Ellimist horse shit. And immediately I realized what's going on here. That the Ellimist is doing some fuckery to let Hawk Tobias, with his new morphing ability again, to get the DNA of his old human body. And I must say again, this is so generous. This is above and beyond for the Ellimist. He is being so considerate right now, and I hate saying that.
Yeah, because now it's not only can Tobias turn into himself if he wants to, but after the whole conflict with the Yerks is over, if that ever happens, then presumably if he really wanted to, he could Nothlit himself and just resume his life as a human. So now, he may not be able to do that freely while the war is still going on because, he still wants to be able to morph and help his friends. But at a certain point, he will be in complete control about whether he wants to go back to being fully embodied human or live the rest of his life as a hawk.
Yeah, and the Ellimist even pops back up to remind him this, that like if he morphs back into himself, he still only has 2 hours. And if he does the 2 hours, we're right back where we started, but in the opposite direction, where he'll be a human forever. And finally, this is when Tobias reckons with the fact that this is more or less what he wanted. He's seeing himself in his human house, and he knows that there's no going back to that for him. That's just not who he is anymore. He would not prefer that life over the one that he's living, to the point where he realizes that because he has been put back in time by the Elemist, he could get himself out of this whole situation. He could say, do not walk home with Jake, do not go to the mall, stay away from everything. But he doesn't. He tells himself in the past to join Jake, to basically to get to where he is now. He does want to be here and present in this fight. And after all of this, the Elemist asks, have I kept my promise? Again, incredibly generous. He did not ever make a promise. Tobias says yes. And then the last line in this chapter is the Elemist saying, and are you happy, Tobias? Which gave me chills.
Yeah, one of the reasons when like you sent out the initial call for like guests to like volunteer and like what books would you specifically want to talk to, like obviously there are a ton of books, some of them I clearly remembered more than others, and like this was one of the ones I wanted to talk about because like this particular scene, this chapter was like one of my clearest memories of the Animorphs from like 20, 15 years ago at this point. It's this moment of reconciliation in like the dead of night, in this game-breaking moment where the Elemist like really throws the rules out the window and says like, yeah, even though you got naughtlitted, you can morph again, you can be part of this fight, and you can reconcile with yourself as a human and this idea of who you really are now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so sophisticated. Like, I think especially the fact that it ends on the question and Tobias does not reply is such elegant, sophisticated writing. This is such a striking moment. It's always nice to have scenes in these books that feel really important, not in like a big stakes way, but just these like really personal ruminations. This chapter is so gorgeous. It's so philosophical. It's so like Ray Bradbury, Ursula Le Guin style sci-fi. You know, this like very high concept, but like thematically very rich and very character centered and saying something so interesting. So chapter 27 is our last chapter. And Tobias, it's Monday, he is going to Rachel's ceremony. He is sneaking around in the back of the auditorium. People keep looking at him and being like they recognize him, but can't really. So he is trying to just be super nonchalant. He watches Rachel like filing out to receive her award. He says that she looks beautiful. She has the usual Rachel swagger. Cassie's giving her a wink. And Marco makes a phony bow as though he's like bowing to like royalty. And then Rachel gets to Tobias and her eyes get wide. And the last line in this book is, "Hi, Rachel," I said with a human voice. And that is the end of the book. And I lost my fucking mind. My brain went 100 miles a minute after this, just being like, oh my God, like what could possibly happen after this? And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean the next book is a Cassie book? I don't need Cassie right now. I need another Tobias book, or I need a Rachel book. What are we doing? What are we doing? And I was like trying to piece and puzzle out, like, what is the fallout from this going to look like? What are these conversations going to look like? What is Marco going to say? What is Jake going to say? And then summarily, because I've already read it, the next book doesn't talk about anything. It like briefly mentions that any of this happened. That's it. We get no conversation, and I have not read past that book, and I'm dying.
See, now with me having read the whole series at this point, my only thought at the end was like, Tobias, what clothes are you wearing? Because he doesn't have clothes anymore.
Wait, hold up, yeah. I didn't even think about that. Tobias, where'd you get clothes, girl?
Well, like, presumably he probably just, like, talked to Jake or Marco and borrowed something of theirs, but again, it's never addressed.
It's really not. Maybe Axe has some clothes that he could bum. Because I got the feeling from this that he didn't tell anybody that he had regained his human body morph, because he wanted to surprise Rachel, and he would know that it would get out there if he had morphed, except for maybe if he only told Axe. But if he only told Axe, I imagine Axe's brain must be doing the same shit my brain was doing, but about what this means for morphing and Andalites. There's so much to unpack here, and none of it gets unpacked.
Yep.
I'm sure we're gonna get to it.
I mean, sometimes, like, the deal with these books is that, like, they don't have all the space to unpack literally everything, and sometimes it's not even, like, the biggest stuff that gets addressed. It's just like, yeah, this happened. Let's move on with it. Maybe we'll think about it when this person's point of view comes back. Maybe not.
I think that I'm just going to have to sit with that and get used to it, and get used to them not ever talking about it directly in very in-depth terms like I would want and hope, despite this being easily the biggest change in these books since they found Axe.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
Do you have any final thoughts on this book before we get to our last segments?
I mean, we've already gone through, like, a lot of this on such a granular level, but, like, yeah, I think just, like, reading back through this, like, specifically and in depth, when before it was just, like, one in a series for me, I'm just, like, really appreciating how good these books can be when they're good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They remain, like, some of the best sci-fi I've ever read. And this book is such a good example of what I mean by that. This play with high genre, high concept, but also really thematically rich, really philosophically rich. I don't typically talk about my ranking of books in these episodes. I usually keep those in the notes for patrons, but I think it's worth saying. This is currently my 4th favorite book. My list is The Visitor, which is book 2, which is my favorite because I love Melissa. Then
Fluffer McKitty.
Yes, obviously Fluffer McKitty. Book 6 is my next, which is where they defy the Geneva Convention and starve the Yerk in Jake's brain. Book number 7 is the next one. It's The Stranger.
Was that the first one where they met the Alamist?
Oh my god, I think it is. Oh, I can't believe these Alamist books keep being this high up, but it was really good. So yes, this is my 4th favorite, which is saying a lot because these books have been so good. But this book was really special, and it felt really special. I do typically rank my favorite characters in regards to the Animorphs. Do you have a ranking of your favorites?
Yes, I got one of those lists up in front of me if we want to go through that.
Perfect. Okay, let's start from the bottom, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my number 6 currently is Marco.
That is fair.
Especially given that this book was my, most recent experience with him. He's never been like a super favorite of mine, but just having to deal with like certain comments of his throughout this book, it's just like, okay, dude.
Yeah, he sucks in this book. He has consistently been my number 1 favorite for a very long time. And this is the first time that he dropped in that ranking, which is wild. My bottom right now is Rachel, which is crazy because I love her. She is typically right up there with Marco, but I wasn't wild about her in this book. I didn't like that she didn't tell Tobias about her award and was like taking agency away from him. I was upset. So my bottom is Rachel right now.
I feel like we do get like very different views of Rachel whenever it is a Tobias POV. And I feel like that's a recurring themes for like any of these characters who are romantically interested in each other. Like we see slightly different views of their love interest whenever it's them narrating. And like sometimes that isn't always beneficial to their characters because like these characters are great because we love them for their flaws and conflicts. And sometimes when you like are in the initial stages of loving a person, it's just like you are willing to brush over those and like look past the red flags.
Yes. The red flags like bloodlust and war crimes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, who's your next?
My number 5 right now is Jake because like
okay,
he's steady, reliable character. He can be a little more interesting when it's his POV, but I don't know, he's kind of a little nothing burger in this book. He's just kind of like, because it's a Tobias book and we need Tobias to be useful and have autonomy, like he kind of takes over some of Jake's roles that he would normally be playing, like making plans, making sacrifices. So Jake is kind of just there in this one.
Yeah, he very much is. Nothing burger is a perfect way of putting it. My next is Axe. He's fine in this book. He just has, again, more like deprogramming to go for me.
My number 4 is Rachel. I do love her getting the Hork-Bajir, getting to like, kind of joke around, acknowledge that like, hell yeah, I want to be a living weapon. This is cool as hell. But at the same time, I feel like our viewpoint of Rachel is always skewed when it's Tobias who's narrating. So we don't always get the points of her that, actually make her interesting as a character.
Yes. Yes. My next is Jake. I agree. He's just kind of a nothing burger, but he didn't actively annoy me the ways that Axe and Rachel did in this book.
My number 3 is Bird Boy himself, Tobias.
Woo woo.
Yeah, he's always been like one of the top 3 for me. He's always interesting as a character when his point of view comes around, but at the same time, you have some of that like going back and forth, the frustrating him not even knowing what it is that he wants. So yeah, he is an interesting character to grapple with.
Yeah. My next is Cassie. She moved up quite a bit. I really like her in this book. She is such a badass. I love that she put together like the Elemist and everything, that she was like immediately pretty on top of that. And then also, I just really loved her speech about how the Hork-Bajir are an endangered species. She's so right, and I just loved her for that. Okay, who's your runner-up for first?
My runner-up is Axe. He's always been my baby boy. I always loved when his like point of view books came around in the series, but you know, he is kind of the problematic fave with like the Andalites propaganda still fresh in his brain, but I always love him, and I, kind of relate to the not knowing how to socialize with the people around him, feeling alien for very obvious reasons, and yeah, he is just my boy.
Yeah. My number 2, likewise, is the other problematic fave. It's Marco. This is me putting him in timeout from being my absolute favorite because he was so misogynistic early on, and I just thought he needed to be literally brought down a peg. Wait, so who's your number 1 right now?
My number 1 is Cassie.
Oh, yeah. Okay, amazing.
Yeah, she's always been up there with Axe as one of my favorites. I think her point of view books are some of the most like interesting perspectives on the events happening around her. She tends to handle her problems in a very different way. And, I've heard you sort of talk about her in like previous episodes, how her non-confrontational ways can be like sort of frustrating for you, but I'm also a fairly non-confrontational person, so I probably related to her a lot more than like Jake or Rachel when I was growing up, just reading her points of view, and just like her connection to animals and her like love of living beings around her. She's just like, I love her.
That must have been really nice growing up too, because I don't feel like we ever really got protagonists who are non-confrontational. Like I feel like in most children's media, like your protag is going to be somebody who is very like action oriented, problem solving oriented. So to be put in Cassie's head and to have that treated with that level of respect must have been really nice.
Yeah.
My number 1, Tobias. I love Bird Boy. He really, even though he was so wrong about his deal with the Elemist, I just feel for him so much. I loved this look into his mind. I just have such empathy for him. And again, I needed to put Marco in timeout. So all of that combined, Tobias is currently my number 1 baby boy. Are you ready for our next segment?
Before we get into some of like the end game stuff, I do have like a question for you about some of your thoughts on the series, and something that occurred to me that like I only sort of read about recently in like Animorphs space online is like, how much time do you think has passed between like the beginning of the Yeerk Andalite conflict and current day? Like, how long do you think all of this has been going on for?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. It's like one of my big things that I'm like, I feel so in the dark about. I think if I had to guess, I would say maybe like it's been going on for maybe like 10 years, maybe? That feels like a lot, but I also feel like it could be like 50 years. And I'd be like, oh, okay. I think I would say like 10-ish years. I also, man, the other part of this conversation is I really don't know what the Yeerk invasion looks like outside of America. And I feel like if I had perspective on that, I would have a much better grasp of how long it's been. Because if it's pretty contained within the States, like then 10 years for sure. If it's spread out wider than that, I would say maybe closer to like 20, 30, 40-50.
Yeah, it's just something that occurred to me when I was like, as an adult reader thinking about like the Hork-Bajir, and they are a species that is like completely controlled by the Yeerks. Like every member of their species is under Yeerk control. But at the same time, you have like Jara and Ket, two Hork-Bajir, presumably with like Hork-Bajir names, who like have a standing marriage to each other. So it's
Yeah.
kind of wild to think about like, yes, this entire species is under your control, but like we don't know how long Hork-Bajir live, but like these are people who are like old enough to have like had social standings with Hork-Bajir as they were supposed to be before Yeerks
Yeah.
took over, presumably, because I don't know if like Hork-Bajir are like still naming their children and having wedding marriage ceremonies or understanding of like that social contract between them. So it's like interesting to think about like how long have Hork-Bajir been under their control and like how quickly is all this moving if they can still remember a time when they were supposed to have been as Hork-Bajir were.
Yeah, this leads to one of my biggest, like, I guess not even questions, but just curiosities in the series is we know that Yeerks have preference over host bodies in as much as, like, for instance, they would rather be in a Hork-Bajir host body than a Taxon. And some of
Mhm.
that is, like, practical, obviously, that, like, Hork-Bajir can defend themselves much easier and what have you. And, humans can like use tools and have thumbs and shit. But I also feel like with the amount of intimacy inherently that the Yeerks have with their host bodies, like I I cannot believe that no Yeerk has ever fallen in love with the culture of their host body. Like, I don't buy that there has never been a Yeerk in a human body who hasn't gotten a haircut because they wanted to see the body different, Like,
Mhm.
I if you have all of these memories that you can access of this human life, I don't buy that Yeerks wouldn't appreciate to some degree human life or human culture. It just makes me so curious about like, and maybe that is the case. Maybe that's just like not how the Yeerks work. Maybe they have no like biological capacity for empathy with their hosts on that level. But I don't know. I don't buy it. And it's something that I think that we likely won't see, but like I would read a book from a Yeerk human controller perspective so
Mhm.
fast. I would pick that up so fast.
Additional question: where do you currently stand on East Coast versus West Coast setting?
Ooh! this one really threw me. I think I'm still gonna say East Coast. I think it's really the next one that throws me because it's like I know from having read it already that it takes place in Area 51. But I am just considering the next book baloney and malarkey. So I think I'm still gonna say East Coast. Ooh, I think. Ooh. Any other questions before we move on?
Last one. How
Yes.
much time do you think the Animorphs main series will span? Like, how much time do you think will pass between first book and last book?
That's a great question. Hmm. Okay. So we know that they're in junior high right now. I am going to say that I do not think these books will go past them being high school seniors. For me, like, that's where I would cut off the books, but I actually don't even think that they're going to get that old in the books. I would say that this will take maybe 2 to 3 years total. Reason being, I think that Scholastic would not want them to move out of their target demographic. Like, I think straight up it's just a Scholastic choice that the kids are not allowed to get too old. And certainly that they would not be able to get older than their initial readership. But I think for the purpose of the book staying evergreen for their specific target demographic, I don't think that they're going to get much older than mid-teens. Again, maybe like 2-3 years. Next segment.
Next segment.
All right. It is time for, and granted, this book kind of throws a wrench in this one. It's time for Forever Morph, the segment in which you tell me if you were an athlet, what form you would take, ideally, and I take this down as very scientific data. What would you be stuck as if you had a choice?
If I had to get stuck as something, I think I'd want to be a tiger.
Sick. Okay, say more.
Just like, for one thing, I would probably rather be a predator species than a prey, so I have a little less anxiety overall. And also, just in general, if I could be like, you know, wildlife sanctuary tiger and all my problems could be solved by someone throwing me like a meat stuffed pumpkin to roll around with, I think that'd be pretty sweet.
Did they do that at a zoo by you as well? They do one here, and it's always so fun.
I haven't seen it nearby me, but I've seen the videos online, obviously, and it just seems like, hell yeah, enrich my life.
Last year, not this previous October, but the one before, we've gone both years, but at this the snow leopard, I believe, or maybe it was it was the Amur leopard. It got its pumpkin with its meat, and it knocked it into the little pond in its enclosure. And then it spent probably over 15 minutes just trying to fish it out with its little paw, but then not wanting to touch the water.
Aww.
It was so funny. I just kept hearing the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme going in the background of my mind. It was hilarious. It was so slapstick. He fucked up so bad.
Slightly related to that, when we were going through the whole chapter of Tobias being dragged away by the raccoon and him talking about how they wash their prey so they can check for imperfections, my thought was just going to the video of the zoo raccoon who takes cotton candy to wash it off, and it just disappears in his paws. And
poor
just
little guy.
The hawk is gone now.
This is very, very good data. Tiger is such a strong choice. Are you ready for our final segment of the day?
Let's do it.
It's time for Nowvermorph. If you were going to morph into something right now, what would it be?
Opossum.
Oh! Ooh! Scraggly little guy.
Yeah, opossums are my favorite little guys. They are needle-toothed garbage angels, and I think I would just like to toddle around as one of them and just eat insects and have glowing, hissing eyes in the dark, and yeah, just be a round little guy.
That sounds so nice. That sounds so nice. I was going to say that you wouldn't be scared of anything, but famously they are scared of everything and do play dead. But that also sounds kind of fun. And they're so cute. They're so cute. Famously, I always love the creatures that everybody else deems as gross or scary. And opossums are very much up that. I find them just truly sweet and adorable. Very good pick. I think for me, this book definitely got me on that bird hype train. I think I would be a little robin flying amok. It is like just at the point right now outside where it's like cold, but not like cold. We're like almost in spring. We're in fool's spring. And I just think it would be very nice to soak up some of that sun and fly all around and feel very free. I'm not usually a bird person, but this book made me appreciate. Thank you, Tobias.
Thank you, Bird Boy.
Thank you, Bird Boy. And thank you, Claudia, for being here with me today. This book was so wild. I can absolutely understand why you chose this one amongst some others, which I'm very excited to have you back for. This has been great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Nevermorphed is hosted, edited, and produced by Will Williams. Our theme music is The Chase by Joey Hendricks. Our title is by Eddie Feely, and this podcast would not exist without Mike Schubert's podcast, Potterless and the Newest Olympian. You can find his works at shub.es, that's shub.es. Nevermorphed is a proud member of Hug House Productions. You can find more at hughouse.productions and follow us on Tumblr at Nevermorphed. Get morphin'!